How's it going, everyone? John here, the host of Spear Talk. You might not know this, but before I record an episode, I like to break a sweat. And I do that using the Chop Fit. Over the course of the past year, the Chop Fit has allowed me to lose weight, tone up my body, and feel even more amazing about myself. A feeling that you should all feel about yourselves as well. If you use this code, SpearChop10, you get $10 off your order. Once again, use code SpearChop10 for $10 off your Chop Fit order. It'll change your life. Thank you. How's it going, everyone? John here, the host of Spear Talk, and today we are welcoming the incredible Betty Broadhurst on the show. Betty recently received her black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu at the age of 65. On the same day, she won double gold at Masters Worlds in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And the accolades themselves sounds amazing, incredible. But what's crazy here, not only did she do this on the same day at the age of 65, but in a sport that she started just over 10 years prior. And Betty, thanks to Joe Rogan posting about you, I never would have been able to find out about you or something like that. And the goal of this podcast has always been to talk to people in all different backgrounds, whether they're established actors, authors, musicians, to everyday people like you and I that have these incredible stories that I think people need to hear and learn to appreciate. And so, Betty, thank you for jumping on here today. And two, talk us through that day, because if anyone has a chance to go into social media and look at the actual video of you getting your honest reaction to this, it's super powerful. And so just again, thank you for jumping on here.
Thank you so much. Well, to walk you through that day, being a master's level, competing in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, the older you get, the fewer opponents you have. So just to build a little background for this was probably my 6th or 7th year flying out west, and I live on the East Coast, flying out west to compete at World Masters. And in all the years previous, I have never had anyone my age. I've always had to go down an age level, or either go down an age level and then fight at someone heavier just to get a match. So the older you get, and that's just by sheer, dynamics of when jiu-jitsu came to the U.S., it's a new sport to the U.S. So it's especially new to women. And so you're not going to find older women. There are a lot of younger and teenagers and females, but not older. So in the years I had been competing, so this was the first year ever I had someone in my age group, my belt level. Now, it was her first year competing. She'd been training and going to camps and doing local competitions, but my opponent had never competed. And we knew each other. The older women have a master's like chat room, because everybody's always looking for a match, or is anyone going to this tournament? So we knew of each other because we were both older, but we were different belt ranks. And it just happened that she got promoted and ended up deciding to compete. So that day, there was brown belts and black belts go on the first and second day. So I was actually on the second day of the competition, and it was a Friday, and I was absolutely excited and trained really hard because I knew I finally had a match. And being 65, one of the things you have to remember is that when you watch young people do jiu-jitsu, at the age 65, sometimes your body doesn't have the mobility, flexibility, or strength, speed that someone younger has. So you have to adapt and do, I call it adaptive jiu-jitsu because it sounds better than Jerry jiu-jitsu, as I used to call it. But anyway, the excitement was really building up, and the match was late afternoon. And I remember being really, my coach was there. Many of my teammates that were other belt colors were there. I think I was the only brown belt competing. My coach had already competed as a black belt master too, and his name is Professor Diego Bispo, and he actually won gold in his division in Master 2 Light. So, we were all up on a high about him being world champion for Master 2 in the Ghee. So when it was time for me to go, stepped onto the mat. I was a little nervous before, but once I step on the mat, I'm fine. It's kind of like this calm comes over me. And we did our match, and believe it or not, I was able to pass her guard. And then she pulled guard, I passed guard. And then from side control, I was able to submit her with an Americana or a key lock, kind of a Kimura grip. So it did not go the entire 5 minutes. A master's level match is 5 minutes. And so when you only have one match, it's not like you have to work really hard on your cardio. Like some of the younger people have to go 7 and 8 matches to get to the finals. I mean, and I was so grateful for one match and grateful for my opponent. So we, they announce the winner. And then after you announce the winner, they tell you to go directly to the podium. And that's where at IBJJF, you step on the podium and the award people call out your name, and a young lady will come that represents IBJJF, and she'll put the silver or bronze medal on the other opponents, and then she'll put the gold medal on the winner last, and you're at the top of the podium. So we went through that. I'm standing there with my gold medal, and I already had my medal for the previous my weight class. And so this was for the absolute division, so which is all weights. And so I'm standing there holding my gold medal, and everybody was cheering for my team. And all of a sudden, my professor runs up. I thought he was running up to give me a hug. And instead, he opens up his gi and pulls something out and starts waving. And it's a black belt. And all I could do was go, oh my gosh. I mean, my face was like, oh my gosh, because that's like the pinnacle of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. It's what. And I guess I've never asked about getting a belt, because all I wanted to do was just keep training and getting better. And I kept thinking, maybe it'll happen, maybe not, because I'm older. I can't do all these wonderful things. I haven't won a lot of tournaments. I've won some, I've lost some, but because most of my opponents are younger when I compete, I don't have a really good win record. So he pulled out this belt and started waving it in the air and doing a little dance. And I don't know if you've seen the video. I think it's better than I kind of get teary-eyed thinking about it, but it's very, very emotional. And it was very emotional for a lot of people in the crowd. A lot of people videoed it, and I just burst into tears and was holding my face. And because number one, I was shocked, and I was already shocked that I had a match. I won the match. I won by submission. So I was thrilled. I had double gold. I mean, that to me was just like icing on the cake that I had won the match, and I won by submission, because winning by submission sometimes is kind of weighted heavier or seen in the jiu-jitsu world as being more kind of like an MMA fight or something. A knockout or win by submission kind of gets the adrenaline going more than saying a referee's decision or winning by points. So I was already on this adrenaline high, and then that came out, and it was just over the top, and then my emotions just let go. And it was like 10 years of work all of a sudden right in front of you, in front of your eyes, in this little cloth belt that represents so much and for so many people. But I think the thing that really got me is I had so many people reach out to me right there after I got off the podium, and I would cry a good while and had pictures made with people. But so many people just came up and said, I just can't imagine, doing this at your age. And I always wondered how long I could keep practicing jiu-jitsu. Or, I'm 35 years old, and I wondered if I was going to have to stop at 40, and I would just laugh and go, oh man, I didn't even start until I was 54 years old. So don't tell me you're going to hang up your gi. Don't ever say that. So it was a great feeling. And it, like you said, the video, I have trained before with Tom DeBlas, who's well known, and he posted it on his Instagram, and he apparently Joe Rogan saw it, I think Jiu-Jitsu Time, and he posted it. And then after that, it was like my whole life sort of changed, because people from all over the world, and of course, Joe Rogan is like, as we all know, he is like one of the great.
Yes.
everybody listens to Joe, athlete, non-athlete, like yourself. He interviews a whole array of people. So when he sees or finds information that's unusual or newsworthy, he will repost it. And so he reposted the Jiu-Jitsu Times article and congratulated me. And that sent off kind of then people would look up my thing, and then they saw the video of me on stage, which kind of me crying and all. And I got a lot of really kind messages from people who had stopped training, had, not quit at blue or purple belt, and gotten overweight and made excuses for not training, and said that it really was a motivator. And so that's sort of what happened that day. And within 3 to 5 days is when I guess Joe Rogan posted it, and that's when it was kind of went viral. Once he posted it, it started getting reposted.
And like your actual honest reaction to that is so amazing and motivational. Even if you're not into martial arts and jiu-jitsu, the whole idea of age is just a number, and I want to talk about that. But the other thing too, with your coach, Professor Diego, his honest reaction to, like, he's so happy for you, and he's a champion of your accomplishments, and how important is it to have someone like Professor Diego or other people you train with that might not have a bad day themselves, but they're the first people to cheer you on too? And how important is that type of relationship to have as you go forward through this craziness of your world with the age, the pandemic, and everything like that?
Yeah, it is of utmost importance, because everyone says, jiu-jitsu is your journey. You're on your own journey, go at your own pace. And that is true. But you also have to have those people surround you as a support system that do push you forward, that accept you for who you are and help you adapt to what you can and can't do. And I cannot commend Professor Diego enough for when I began training with him, knowing there were certain things, and he being a multi-world champion, Ghee and Nogi, he won World's Nogi also this year. Wow. Master. And we have several champions that have come out of our gym. Our kids program is very active, but for him to always work with me and take the time when he would teach a move, okay, Betty, the fact that your hips are tight, you can't like throw your leg around the back, but here's another way you can do something. So having someone that takes that extra to give you another way to do things and is constantly encouraging you, and then to have a team that looks up to you, not just because I've done great things as far as a jiu-jitsu athlete, but the fact that I keep showing up. And that's one of the things I always kind of put when I message people: just show up and train, just show up and do what you can do. Yeah, it is your journey, but the people around you are going to respect you and encourage you. And it's important getting in the right school and being with the right community and group, because jiu-jitsu is a little different as a sport that I have found as far as martial arts. Number one, you don't get hit in the face or anything like the other martial arts, or kicked. And for someone like me, I was looking for something that wouldn't, I was not afraid of getting injured. And because of the tap being allowed,
yes,
when the rule is if you tap, your opponent lets go. So you have a trust with your opponents, even though you don't know them, but especially your teammates. When you're drilling and sparring in your gym, you have this trust. So you know that when your arm's getting in an arm bar and it's too tight, you tap and they let go. So I think it's a safe martial art, and it's built on trust. But having someone like Diego and the team that he's built and the attitude and the camaraderie he's built was everything, because one of the photographers there snapped a picture of the crowd, because I looked up when I got the submission, and I just looked straight at them with this grin that was just so big. But I'm on the mat, and everybody's hands are in the air, and it's just like you're looking toward, they're like your cheering section. And anyway, it was a great feeling. And thank you for asking about Diego, because he is the reason that you keep going, because you want to do you want to please your coach, your team, and you want to be a part of what everyone else is doing too.
You mentioned having to fight down to younger females because there's no one your age. Have you ever talked to a female fighter that you've gone against and asked them what what their first perception was of you being an older female? Like, I'm always curious because if I'm going against someone, no matter what I'm doing, whether it's a swim or whatever, and I see someone who looks older than me, my first reception is, oh, this is a piece of cake for me. Like, that's just that naivety, like that just ignorance. And so, but when you step into the BJJ stuff, have you ever talked to a female that's been like, man, Betty, all hats off to you because I thought this was gonna be a cakewalk and you made me work for this, or you kicked my ass?
Yeah, I have. A lot of the smaller local tournaments, and they have a lot of local tournaments that, like they'll come to Virginia. I live in Virginia Beach, Norfolk, Virginia area on the coast. So there are a lot of tournaments in Virginia, North Carolina, Maryland that come locally, just like they do all over the US. So a lot of your competition are women within those regions. So you get to know a lot of the women from going to open mats and cross training at other schools, which one thing I can say about Diego also is he encourages us to visit other academies when we travel and to get to know people and to train at their open mats, because it's a sport that you learn from your opponent as well as yourself. You can go back and fix your error. You learn from each other. You can't have a closed mind and just learn. Like if you went to one classroom all day long with one teacher, you have that exposure to other people. So a lot of the women I knew I had rolled with, there are a lot of schools that'll have like once a month a women's only open mat, because a lot of women like to train with just women, because it is different. The majority of the schools, this is changing, but most of the time the people are more men are in martial arts. So a lot of times when we're drilling, you're drilling with a male partner, and the male body is different as far as strength, flexibility, and size. Just because, when you're rolling with someone, when I weigh around 150 to 160 and I'm rolling with somebody that's 225, it's a real big difference than when I'm rolling with somebody that's 125. So, yes, I've had women that I have rolled with in Nogi, and they honestly have told me before, and a lot of them know me, and they know how long I've been training and that I take it very seriously, that I know there's like a Kimura lock. Once a time you get a Kimura lock, all of a sudden they'll stop because they weren't expecting it. Like, what am I going to do to get out of this? Because if you don't do just the right thing, you may not get out of it, or you can break your arm. So I may have lost a lot to younger women, but I can say a lot of them had to work for it. They had to work for it, and it wasn't, just a 30-second match. So yeah, I would go. Most of the time, I would lose, but at least I gave them a good fight. And the other aspect, and I'm glad you asked that, is that I tried throughout my years of training jiu-jitsu. I immediately started competing as soon as my early coaches told me could, because I wanted to compete and I wanted to get better, and they were telling me that was the way to get better. But as I got more into it and started getting active in a lot of these chat rooms and all, I found out how few women, just even younger women, had matches. There would be when people start jiu-jitsu, they're a white belt, which is the beginner. And then once they're in it for about a year and a half, the next promotion is blue. Once you get to blue at the local level, you see one female purple belt is rare. So it was really rare sometimes for some of these women would sign up and there would be no one for them to compete against. So I made up my mind that no matter what, anytime there was a competition nearby and I had a teammate going, I was going to sign up and I was going to be there for that opponent, because I wanted somebody to be there for me when and if my time came. So there were many times I was the only purple belt and somebody would have signed up and they drove, 100 miles, and they'd look across and I would be the only person, but at least they had a match. and that happens a lot at the local tournaments at the purple belt level. You don't see a lot of female purple belts, and then you certainly don't see them my age. So I used to always, and then there were a couple of other girls that were purple belts in other parts of the area I described, and we kind of started this thing about we're going to always show up for each other. And so if the tournament was within 100 miles or we had a group going, or we would try to go and be there, or at least sign up and show other women who there's no purple belts, I'm not going to go. So if we would sign up, other people would go. So it would be, number one, supportive of the venue or the promotion, and supportive of the other women to know that they would have a match. It might be an older woman, but it would be a match. And that helps them regardless. And I didn't get to purple belt just, by showing up for class. It's not like an attendance where you get a star, Right. A lot of women would come up to me after my matches and go, gosh, I wish I could do that. But I waited too late. I said, you can't say that to me because I'm 58 years old. I just started 4 years ago, or I'm 50, 7 years old. I started at 54. I began attracting some attention from other women. And that's when I finally decided, okay, I'm going to go compete at Masters Worlds. And my first competition was a blue belt. And I cut weight because I had never done a weight cut before. And the only opponent I could find was a Master 4. And she was a blue belt. And she was the oldest person there. And I was like I would have been a Master 6. So I went down 10 years and I cut 15 pounds over a 2-month period to get that match. We were the oldest 2 women there. This is 7 years ago. And it was so funny because we're still friends today. And she was from San Francisco. And she and I, at the end, she beat me. And at the end of the match, the referee handed his phone to the timekeeper and said, take my photo with these ladies. He said, I want to send this to my wife because she's always making excuses for not training. He was Brazilian. So, and he posted it on his Instagram, which was kind of cool. That was my first Masters. And then the next year I came back as a purple, and same opponent, but she went up. She went up in age, and she went up. You can go up in weight. Like if I wanted to fight a super heavy person, I can go up. I just can't go down. So she came up. So I was like 10 pounds heavier than her, and we fought again. And then the next year, more women started getting involved, and I had a different opponent. And so, yeah, it was like this was my 7th appearance at the Masters.
I have
10 years.
I have a question just to kind of clear up my head. Obviously, the difference between Nogi and Ghee is the Ghee's not there, but do the rules change per se in terms of what's allowed, or is it just because there's no Ghee you can't grab and stuff like that?
I think it depends on the actual tournament, but if we're talking about IBJJF,
Okay.
which is kind of in the US and internationally is sort of the gold standard because it came out of Brazil. And when people say they're a world champion, they're usually an international. It stands for International Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu Federation. But there are many other venues that have grown now. But yeah, there's no Ghee competition. Depending on the belt level, like you cannot do certain locks. And no Ghee just this year, this calendar year, 2021-22, began allowing heel hooks for brown and black belts. Heel hooks were not allowed before. So that was a big problem a lot of people had with IBJJF, because that part of no Ghee, some of the fun parts of it are things like, if people watch MMA, you see people like that do heel hooks. It's like when you like grab a heel and you pull it, and what it does, it really blows the ACL or the knee out. And it's a way by you trap the leg above the knee line, and you put it under your armpit, and there's certain ways you twist it. You can get an inside heel hook and outside heel hook, but that is the biggest thing. Heel hooks are not allowed in the Ghee. Knee bars are allowed in the Ghee. Toe holds, where you grab the foot and squeeze the toe in the opposite direction, are allowed, but only at brown and black belt levels. So certain levels have certain things. But yes, on the Ghee, you use the cloth. you cannot use the belt to grab and choke. I've seen people that didn't know would grab the belt and try to choke somebody, but the belt's just something you wear for your right. But you use the lapels like this to choke someone, or you do a cross choke like this. You grab them from the back. A lot of the no-gi things, the grips are different because you can grab your own cloth. You cannot grab your opponent in no-gi. So, okay. Right, I could grab my own shorts or my own rash guard, but I can't grab my own opponents. And very often when people are transitioning or learning no-gi, when they come to their first no-gi class, they're constantly grabbing you because they're so used to the grips, the cloth grips. And I personally prefer training no-gi because, number one, when you get older, you have people in jiu-jitsu have bad hands anyway from the grips, and knuckles get swollen. And being older, I have some mild arthritis. So gripping lapels sometimes is a little painful, not too painful, but it's harder. But when you grip no-gi, you do grips like this, or you clasp like this, or like this when you're locking somebody's body. So I use a lot of the no-gi grips while competing in gi. I mean, I grab the cloth also, but I find that I have better control, using the no-gi. So I can transition pretty well. And I like no-gi because it's a little bit faster. It moves faster. And for some reason, I feel more flexible. The gi is like wearing like a jumpsuit sort of, or it's heavy cloth. It's very heavy. If you've ever worn a gi, very different than the karate. I think they're made of a lighter cloth than Taekwondo gis. They have to be a certain weave in order to compete, and they're very heavy. And that's for the grippy. They're very much like a judo gi. They're very heavy. So as far as the difference in gi and no gi, yeah, you could do, most of the moves are the same, such as the chokes, the back takes. The feet are the part that are very different in most competitions. And that's based on skill level.
Gotcha. You mentioned earlier the idea of just people that are afraid to even show up to start the day, no matter what their job is. People that think, I'm too tired, or I can't do it, or it's not possible. What advice do you have to those people that after they see you, when they come up to you, they're like you said, like, man, I had no idea. Like, I stopped when I was 40, and here you are, 25 years old, and I am competing and winning. Is it? I guess it's a two-part question. Obviously, it's humbling for you to have those people respect you like that and see what you've done to inspire others. But what advice do you have for those people that are still kind of like, I'll do it tomorrow, or this whole defeatist mindset? Because it's really inspiring watching you have the impact you've had on these people.
I think the advice is that even some days when you don't feel like it, it's kind of like, I want to say it's almost like when you talk to someone that has mental health issues, sometimes you have to say, you just have to put one foot forward. And maybe if you don't feel like it, you just got to get out of the bed, put one foot forward before the other. Get up, go brush your teeth, you've accomplished something. If you can't go but one day, go that one day and sit and observe. Maybe if you don't feel physically like it, sit and observe. But I think once you leave and go out, you will feel so much better. There have been days when I felt like, God, I'm tired. I had a long day. By profession, I'm a pharmacist. And a lot of days I'm on my feet, and it's very mentally taxing doing drug calculations and IV calculations. I'm a hospital pharmacist. And you just want to go home and just Netflix in bed, vegetate. But I would say, okay, it's almost 7:00. I got to be in the car by 6:30 to get to the gym. I'd always have my gi and rash guard and sports underclothes always packed in a bag. I always keep a clean set in the car. So that if I had to drive straight from work, or if I'm visiting somewhere, I always have one in the car. Time to get to the car and go. And that way I just get in the car and start driving. And once I was there, I was so glad I did it when I came home, because my choice was I would have probably sat in front of the TV and eaten chips, and drank a beer or, not done any exercise, when you're sitting on the side, sometimes on a rest round, it becomes almost therapeutic, like having someone to chat with. And as you get to know the people in your gym, how's your son doing in wrestling? Oh, he's great. He's going to blankety blank competition next week. Or how's your daughter doing in gymnastics? And how's your mother, Betty, your elderly mother that lives in North Carolina? Oh, she's doing really well. She's still living independently. And so there's some aspect of the mental health wellness, the socialization that it provides to you that you can't get at home sitting alone on the couch or being away. And, you go in, you drill a little bit, you roll. It's not a 2 or 3 hour thing. It's maybe an hour and a half maximum, but you feel so good about going. And I think when you come home, you feel accomplished. Like when people say, I walked 15 minutes, after I ate dinner tonight, a lot of times doctors encourage older people to walk. And that's a great way to get started. If you don't feel like your cardio's there yet, you don't have to roll the whole time. You can just come in and watch and do a few things, and just learn the technique, not do the cardio part yet and build up to it. But I think the fact that if knowing that you're doing something for your health, and that it's, and number two, not only your physical health, but your mental health. And that's kind of a hidden, I think it's kind of a hidden gem, GEM, with jujitsu, in that it's a component. And I realized pretty short on, because I'm divorced, so I was single when I started, and my kids were grown. And it was a way for me to get involved rather than going to a gym where I sat and did a barbell, or I lifted weights or did something like that. I'm so grateful that I got diverted into the sport, because it put me in a surroundings where I talked with people. And then when you go to competitions, you travel together as a group, you become a team, like you're cheering for your teammates. So the benefits go so beyond that, just stopping in after work, once you get involved to that level. And what I also observe, so many families, I've seen the kids, some of the women that I have trained with or have gotten to start training, had children, and they were always sitting on the side during kids class, and their husband may be trained, and so their children trained. And I would speak to them, why don't you come train? I need another woman your size, or something like that. I don't know. I said, come on, it would be a family thing. The kids class is over here, the adults are over here. And I know I probably influenced at least 5 or 6 women, just probably in the last 5 years, that have started training at a gym where I am that weren't training before. In fact, one of the gyms that I trained at probably 6 or 7 years ago, she was a mother, and her husband was a brown belt that trained with me when I was a blue belt, and I got her to start training. Well, she's a purple belt now, and she competed at her first masters and actually won, and she's a masters 3. But I was so excited, because you feel like that's one of your babies, that's someone that you lured onto the mat, and now both her daughters train, and she just won her first gold medal. So the benefits just kind of keep multiplying.
I picture you guys like a holiday get together where one of you talks back to the other, and all of a sudden it ends up on the dining room table into a full out choke competition where you guys are fighting. I think I can just picture the family feuds now, where it's like straight out.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Because like we had a Christmas party, our gym did, and it's so funny because you're standing there and people might sneak up behind you and choke you, or somebody grabs your leg like they're going to double leg or single leg you. So it's like that kind of atmosphere, and then the people that are not the wives or husbands of people that don't compete, you could see that they see that we all have this gelling among each other. And I think they become involved. They end up traveling and going with us to competitions. And it's a really wonderful thing. And I think for families that it's something a lot of couples can do together. children and parents can do together, or if not, the children. It's one of the best sports for kids to get involved in. I think Kelly Slater, who's a very famous surfer, said that if you're going to put your child in any sport, put them in jiu-jitsu first, because you learn a lot of discipline.
It's, for me, it's like, it's very interesting. Obviously the last 2 years affected everyone differently and whatever, but with you with the pharmaceutical side of things and you working with Roll Forever in your gym, it had to have been mentally and physically draining on both fronts for you, trying to navigate through this crazy times.
It was very difficult and hard. Being a hospital pharmacist, and it was very draining. And in the early days of COVID, and I worked a really strange shift. I worked 7 days on and 7 off. And that was so that I could travel, because I'm at a point in my life, I'm nearing retirement, and I wanted to be able to have time off to train or to travel for tournaments. And not just locally, but I also like to be a spectator for tournaments, like some of the international. I've gone to some of the, like ADCC. I went to Finland for that, and I went to the ADCC tournament in Anaheim, California in 2017. So I think once you get into this, there's levels to it. So you become, really addicted to watching the greats and seeing great championships and things like that. So during the COVID, no one knew back then. I want to say back then, but just because it's gone into the third year, it's kind of hard to think. But I think it was 2019 when it was in China, and then it came out. Our hospital where I work in Virginia was the distribution hospital for the vaccine. So I got my first, I'm vaccinated, and, being 63 years old and working in a hospital in a trauma center. And like I said, I'm not political about it, but it was my personal choice to do that just because of my situation and with age and my work environment. So we were able, being on the front line, to get the vaccine very early. So I got my first one like the last week of December when they first rolled in, and then we rolled them out to other hospitals and other areas in Virginia. And then when they started having public vaccination clinics, on top of our job taking care of all the regular sick people, and we did heart transplant surgery, kidney transplants, open heart surgery, we would prepare all those IV fluids and all. We were having to draw up COVID vaccines, but the clinics, they would have like open clinics in the auditorium for the public. And then FEMA came in and rented an unoccupied mall. And so we were asked by the federal government, if they brought in the vaccine, would we draw it up? So not only did we have our regular jobs, we had the addition of not only the COVID treatment patients that were inpatient, the outpatients. So it became very stressful, and to the point that in June of 2021, I just got really tired. I was trying to train on my 7 days off, and I finally just said, I need a break, time out. And I took some leave, and just decided that, because I think, and as we all very aware of the environment today, a lot of the healthcare people are going into other professions, they're leaving. And I knew that if I did not, especially at your age, and you're trying to juggle that. And it was a good decision I made, because I needed that time to like regroup, and I had the time off. And so I was able to, maintain my mental stability and to be able to continue training, which was of course, before then the gym was locked up. We couldn't train. So, we went through this period where we couldn't even train. So I guess that was okay, because everybody could train. But then when you're working and they tell you you're an essential worker and you have to come to work, I couldn't work from home. It wasn't that type job. And things began to open up, as the vaccinations increased and whatever down the timeline. But work with Roll Forever started several years ago, and I think it was impacted a lot by COVID because, of course, there were no tournaments, there was no competitions for the athletes as sponsors, there was no real activity. So, just like COVID, it affected what it was doing, but yet it tried to support in the best way it could the athletes it did. And then when competitions started back up, then people started working and training again, things picked back up. But in the meantime, I made the decision not to return to work, that I'm old enough to retire. So after I did the world championship and got my black belt, I decided, I really like this pace, and I think that I'm not going to, so I chose retirement. So in December, I retired. So I'm actually now, I've kept my pharmacist license. If I want to work, I can go somewhere and work a day or two. It's a wonderful profession for that. But it's also very gratifying because now I'm helping Diego teach noon class. I'm also helping teach beginners. And we're trying to start some classes for, like, I don't know if we're going to call it adaptive jiu-jitsu or jiu-jitsu over 30, but a lot of people have asked if I would teach. That people that are larger or have flexibility issues, or women that are older that have kids, have asked, I'll do it if Betty teaches. So we're setting up for this year, like maybe a 2 times a week class that I would do. But I think I've taught lunch a couple of times, class for Diego. I'm able to go to lunch class now. So I train mainly at the noon class, which I really like because it's a smaller group. And sometimes when you have limitations, being with a smaller group is better because you don't have to explain to everybody, hey, I've got bad hips, so don't try to, knee slice me or pull my leg in that direction, because it won't go that way. When the night classes are usually larger, I go to the night classes, but not as many. But I've stepped in and taught for Diego. He has a new baby, 3 months old. And so I've stepped in and taught for him since I've gotten my black belt, maybe 3 or 4 times at the noon class. And I absolutely loved it. I've taught classes before, but it's never been like you were the one
Right.
teaching. It was teach whatever you want to teach that falls in line with what we're studying this week. And I've had so many people come up and tell me they liked it. So I kind of like found, oh, here's something else I could do, So I'm always looking for, I don't know, it's almost like I told someone, I had this wonderful life where I went to college, got married, had 2 beautiful children. Children are educated. When I ended up in a divorce, but anyway, kept working as a single professional woman. Everything went along. And then at about the age of 53, 4 or 5, people start talking about, well, I need to start thinking about downsizing my house, or if I'm going to move close to my children because I'm getting older. And I was like, heck, I don't want to talk about that. I was telling someone the other day, that was that part of my life. And now that I've retired from my professional job, this is kind of like now my jiu-jitsu life. I kind of had this jiu-jitsu life that started at 54. And so now it's kind of like I've graduated from jiu-jitsu college with getting your black belt. So now I'm like on this new journey with jiu-jitsu in that part of my life.
I love the idea. Like, everyone's like, "Oh, age is just a number." It's easy to say it unless you see something like that. But when you follow sports, like Tom Brady now, who they're saying he could play to 50 because it's people like that, or people like yourselves. And there's people like Mike Tyson who want to keep fighting, and so that's a whole other topic. But do you ever sit back and wonder, man, what if you had started Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu 10 years earlier? Or is this something where you knew it started at the time when you needed it, and that's what's most powerful to you?
I think that you hit the nail on the head with the second statement. I started at a time when I personally needed it. And for a lot of personal reasons, it fit into my life. And secondly, 10 years prior to that, there was no Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. It's a relatively new sport, right. And it really didn't. I remember some of my colleagues in North Carolina saying that they would drive to New York for a 3-day weekend to train at Henzo Gracie's because he was the closest person that had a black belt. And they would drive up I-95 and train Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, and then drive back to North Carolina and they did it weekend after weekend because it was rare. And then maybe one of them would get a purple belt, and then they'd come back and start teaching everybody in North Carolina, and they would develop a little school. Then they'd go back up, and then they'd get promoted to brown belt. And so it was a rare thing in the 90s to find a purple belt. There were no things as a black belt unless somebody happened to, be driving through. But you had to go either to California or to New York. We're like, I don't even know if Marcella had his gym then, but Henzo was the first gym, and that most people went up there. And a lot of the MMA fighters that are black belts, like George St. Pierre, drove down from Montreal to Henzo's. Matt Serra.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So if you think about it, all the ones that are black belts that were in the UFC in the early days, they had to go to where there was somebody. So there wasn't anywhere for me to go 10 years before. And there was only one school where I lived then. And the way I got started is that the particular jiu-jitsu school was in Wilmington, North Carolina. There's an MMA fighter named Derek Brunson that's from there, and also a guy named John Salter that's an MMA fighter for Bellator that's there. Okay. But anyway, they're from that town. And I lived in that town. It's a beach community. And they had an actual gym that was on the beach. But they had at a women's self-defense, free 2-hour little session where some of the upper belts came, and they taught you a few of the self-defense moves, like how to break out of a hole, a bear hug, or if somebody gets on top of you, how to get them off. And I thought, oh, this is pretty cool. I like this, and I went for personal reasons because, you're at that age where you're living alone, and, you're working different shifts as a pharmacist. So you thought this would be a good thing to do. And it was being trained by people that were reputable, and I had heard of the school, and one of them was a black belt that had gotten his black belt. He'd gone down to Brazil and gotten his black belt. So I read about the school, made sure, I did my background checks to make sure it was legit, went, and I really liked it. And I liked what I did. But, then they gave you a card and said, if you'd like to learn more, it's kind of a marketing thing also. So I went over and talked to one of the instructors, but I had a fear of my age and also of people. My confidence was not very good at that time. When you're post-divorce and your kids are gone, and all of a sudden you're kind of trying to find yourself again. You're in that quasi zone, and all the people around you are playing bridge or doing things that you don't do. I mean, I played golf, but I was and I was decent at golf and tennis, but I thought this isn't really what I wanted to do. And I didn't want to sit around drinking wine and playing cards either. So he said, well, I'll tell you what we'll do. Why don't we take private lessons if you want to really invest yourself? And every Saturday you come and, we'll have a lesson. And then after 8 weeks, you can decide. Well, what he would do is they would have a class right after my lesson. He would get one of the students to come half an hour early so that I would have a training. He would teach me a lesson. Then I'd have somebody to train with while he watched. So during those 8 weeks, it was a different person every time. Okay. So by the time the 8 weeks was up, I already got to know 8 of the people. There were 2 females and 6 males, and I already knew them and had developed, a relationship just from having that private class. So when I went, I made the decision, okay, I'm going to go into the group. And there were more people, but because I already knew that core little number of people, it made it much more adaptive and easier for me. And I was very shy about it at first, but then when it was a very accepting and I think a very encouraging community. And that was one of the things that I really liked about it. And then when they started talking about competition, then I got really excited. I thought, well, I'd really like to see what it's like. And because I kept noticing some of the people were better than others, but yet they had been training at the same time. And they said, well, they come to the competition class because they want to compete. And I said, well, I want to get better faster too. So I want to go to that same class. So I would start coming to the competition class. And the next thing I'm signing up for competitions. I'd only been training 8 months as a white belt, but I dove right in, and it was fun. That's when you started realizing the social network and finding yourself that you were part of a team and cheering for the people that were really good and all. So that was kind of the initial beginnings of how. But yeah, I think for that time, your original question, it wasn't really offered when I was 44. But it was there when I was 54. So I'm very grateful that I was able to step in. It was around in the 1990s, but not in the area I lived in. One of my good friends is Felicia O, that lives on the West Coast. And she was the sixth non-Brazilian female black belt. They call them the Dirty Dozen. There's like 12 men and 12 women that were non-Brazilians that got their black belts. And she was number 6. And she was living in California, but California was kind of a mecca. Let's see, that's where, can't even think, the Hicks and Gracie opened his school out there, Jean-Jacques Machado. So in that California strip, there were a lot of Ralph Gracie. There were several Brazilians that went there, and then Henzo went to New York. So if you lived on the California area, a lot of the early women black belts came from that strip. They were in the California area. And so she was the only person I knew that got a black belt in the 1990s, or started training in the 1990s, because, but now kids are training at 3-4 years old. They're going to have been training as long as I have by the time they're 13, 14, and that's an opportunity I didn't have. I mean, when I was in high school, we had softball. We didn't even have soccer back then. I mean, it wasn't even popular in the US in the 1970s and 80s. So I think it's the timing, but it was a good timing for me because in my personal life, I needed it. And it also allowed me to create Roll Forever and to give back to the community. And my decision to do that was just based on wanting to be more involved, other than just attending class, and to help others. Because I think when you have been given, let me say the personal resources, being that I had a good job and I had lived a great life up to that point, and then all of a sudden it's like material things don't mean as much to you at some point, but you start wanting to give back. And I start thinking, I'm so lucky I could fly out to New York and train at Henzo's, or I can fly to California, but so many of these young people on my team or in the community can't do that. So I had this idea that why don't I start hosting seminars and maybe bring some of these athletes to North Carolina or Virginia. So we started doing that, and I would get a gym to allow me to use their gym, and I would, contact whoever their manager or the athlete themselves. And it was a win-win because the athletes, that's how they make money. And it's expensive being a professional athlete because they have to train, they have to eat properly, they have to pay a coach or somebody for strength and conditioning. I mean, they don't have time to do a job. I mean, like a hobbyist is someone like myself that was working a job and then training at night. A professional is someone that is their job. So their bread and butter was doing seminars. I said, well, this will bring new skills to the area, and it helps the professional athletes make money. So I gave my little company a name called Roll Forever. And so I started putting these seminars together, and they were very successful. I mean, I had a lot of really big name world champions that came through, and we had a lot of people benefited and took those skills and went out and were able to share them with their team members. And it was open to all gyms. It wasn't just my gym. And we charged admission, and then we were able to pay the athlete. people took that knowledge back to their own gyms, trained it. And so it was like spreading good things. And Bernardo Feria, who is a very famous world champion, did one of the seminars for me. He actually put a YouTube he's interviewing me on a YouTube way back before my black belt about, tell me about Roll Forever, Betty, and why you do it. And he said, I wish every state had someone like Betty that put Roll Forever down, because there's so many rural communities don't get that, like, you know, areas of Arkansas or, you know, places that just aren't very populated, that don't have the opportunity. So that's what got me going into that. And then from there, I started sponsoring athletes. And that's kind of where we are today. Is now there's a lot of master's level and regular competition athletes that I sponsor to try to help them. And we set up a website, and we try to sell just basic gear, and all 100% of the profits. It's a nonprofit, so everything goes toward financing the athletes, helping them get to competitions. So yeah, I don't keep any of the money. I mean, it all goes toward them. So it's been a real rewarding thing, and it's almost like an outlet that has expanded and kind of caught on. And the whole name came that, you know, when I was thinking about jiu-jitsu, it was like, it's a one place that anybody, regardless of age or ethnicity or religion, gender, can do. You know, once you're on the mat, it doesn't matter. You know, it's not whether, you know, what color you are or what religion or anything. You know, you're just an opponent, or you're just someone that's doing a sport that you both share and love. And age didn't matter, because I can roll with a 16-year-old or a 75-year-old. I mean, it doesn't matter. The skills are the same when we adapt to each other. And I think knowing that, you're able to allow it's for everyone. And so I remember someone asked me when I was training the first couple of years, how long are you going to do this, Betty, since you started late? And I said, well, I don't plan on stopping. I said, I plan on rolling forever. And so that's where I kind of came up with the name. And since then, I think it's made a lot of athletes think, because a lot of them have thought about, when am I going to stop jiu-jitsu? I've had some of my people in my gym said they wondered if they would still be able to train at 40 or 50, or were their knees or their hips, you know, when they see what happens to their parents when they start aging. But they've seen me, and they know there are things that I can't do, you know, mobility wise or flexibility wise, but they know there's still a way to do it. You adapt and you do it. And I think it kind of breathes a sigh of relief that you don't have to hang up your gi. You don't have to give up that sport. You know, they're baseball players, and there's certain sports where Michael Jordan, for example, you know, it's time to hang up the jersey or whatever.
Right.
This is something as a hobbyist that you could do. I mean, I guess you could play basketball forever too, but I'm saying as far as they have competitions set up for master's levels and things like that. So it is something that you can carry on for a lifetime. I'm not sure if people can do that with every sport. And so that's another thing about it, and why I felt like I'm trying to be a good ambassador for the sport, and in more ways than one, not just the getting a black belt at age 65, but also some of the things that I did prior to that, as far as like trying to spread knowledge and trying to help the professional athletes get financing. I think all of that, I think there's a lot more behind me than just getting the black belt on the podium. And I appreciate the opportunity you've given me to share that, because I'm very proud of Roll Forever and where it's gone. I have a lot of athletes that I help now that I know they would not be where they are as far as ranked in Nogi or competing in European competitions and things, had they not had the support of Roll Forever Pay and some of their hotel and travel accommodations, things like that, and because of people buying the gear and supporting it, they're supporting athletes. So, I always try to say it's athletes supporting athletes. So that's just kind of in a nutshell what it represents, and what I feel like, my contribution, or everyone who participates or buys from Roll Forever's contribution is toward the sport.
Well, I think you are an incredible ambassador for the sport and for Roll Forever. And this has been truly humbling and amazing. And so before I let you go, though, if people want to reach out to you or the Roll Forever, do they hit you up on social media? I know you're very busy and stuff with posting on Instagram, but is there a specific website or some place where if someone has a question, or, hey, I just want to get started, or I saw your video, you inspired me, that type of stuff, how can people reach out to you?
The easiest way is my Instagram is BJJ Betty at BJJ Betty. And in my bio, it has a link to Roll Forever, the website. And Roll Forever is also just Roll Forever. And you can actually go there, and the link is in the bio also. And when you get to the website, it has to contact us. You can email, you can DM me on Instagram. I answer. I'm not really good with Facebook. I'm going to be honest. I have my thing set up where it feeds to Facebook, but I don't know. It's something about Facebook. Seems like I don't check into it, but like once a week.
Right.
But it's it feeds straight to Facebook. But I usually check all my Instagram messages, and the website emails come directly to me. And I have a website coordinator who makes sure, he checks the mail also. And he helps run the website for the shop.
Love it. Well, thank you for your time today, Betty. Hopefully you do keep rolling forever, and we will have to do this again down the road.
Absolutely. Let's do it again. And thank you so much for giving me the opportunity.
Thank you, Betty.
Thank you all for checking out this week's episode. Once again, I'm John. If you liked what you heard and saw today, subscribe to our YouTube channel, find us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, and check out our brand new merch store with hats, coffee mugs, t-shirts, other cool stuff coming down the pipeline. Again, thank you all for support. Be safe, and see you next week.